Hi guys, so as promised, I just wanted to make a YouTube video explaining about the informal apraxia screener that I've put together and made available online for free. So if you just jump onto my website, Olga Komadina Apraxia Therapy.com.au, on the front page, you can click on Take Our Free Online Screening Test. That will take you there. And let's explore together. All right, so the way I thought I might introduce this is if we take it right to the beginning, let's think about how babies first start to babble and how babies and toddlers start to talk. And that helps to set a really good foundation for understanding how we set our targets for motor speech therapy. So I'll just start with a question. What do you think is easier to say? Do you think mama or mum? So mama or mum? I know when I was first asked this question, when I was getting more into motor speech training for speech therapy, I thought, well, maybe mum, because mum is shorter. But actually, if we think about how much control we need just to drop the jaw to say mama, papa, baba, it's not very much. We don't need to get that any sort of vowel precision. We're just dropping the jaw. But to say mum, we need to be able to seal that off quite precisely, and we need to have a knowledge that we need to seal our lips and press. Whereas the other way is just to lose mama, mama, and not a very precise vowel either. Okay, so then if we think about it that way, when I'm going to be assessing a child's speech to check whether there's signs of apraxia, I'm going to start somewhere. Let me explain first the CV structures. So consonant is C. C stands for consonant. V stands for vowel. So we have CV repetitive. So these are the easiest babbling type words. Mama, papa, dada, boo boo, baba. So we check, can the child do these? And then the next step, if we want to see, okay, they're fine with those, what's the next step that just makes things a little bit harder, but is just the next step up? So then we're going to go to these types of words here. What do you notice with these words? So what stays the same and what changes with these ones? It's not a clear reduplication like on this other side. Something is changing. So you can see it's the vowel changes, but the consonants stay the same. So the syllable structure is getting a little bit harder, but it's still just the next step up. So we have mummy, daddy, papi, babu. So the consonants staying the same, the vowels changing. But please note, so far we're only focusing on early developing sounds. So we're not even including any k or g sounds, even though they come at around 3. We're just focusing on the earlier sounds if you think about the first sounds that babies say. So the m, the n, the p, the b, the t, and the d. That's it. And in therapy we would also look at the w. Okay, and probably h as well. But that's the group of early sounds. And unless a child already has some other sounds in that they are able to say, I'm not going to be I kind of digress, but we're not worrying about later sounds at this stage. Anyway, so moving on. So we've looked at CV. We're still on CV, but it's a next level up because the vowels have changed now. It's harder to say. How are they going here? Are we maybe seeing more errors? Or are they still going pretty okay? Okay. Let's jump over, just for the sake of understanding the differences in these CV structures. Let's jump over to this one here. What do you notice has changed? Again, it's all early developing sounds, but the syllable structure is different. Can you see how? What has changed? So the consonants and the vowels change. So that's all that this means up here, is just noting that there's one consonant, there's one vowel, and then there's a different consonant, the consonant number 2, and then there's a different vowel to here, vowel number 2. Yes, it's written as Y, but we say it as E, it's a vowel. So every consonant and every vowel changes here. So we've taken it up a notch, we've made it harder. So if it's a child who's got a motor speech difficulty, the harder these syllable structures get, probably the more errors you're going to start to see, especially with somebody with severe CAS or who's younger and has CAS or suspected CAS. So you might be starting to see, you know, there was only a few errors with this mama, papa, maybe a little bit more with mummy, daddy, papi, or there might be, depending on the severity again, like it just, yeah, I'm just using a case example. Say, for example, you're noticing just maybe they got, you know, 3 out of 5 here, but well, suddenly you come to this one here where both vowels and consonants change within one word. So the syllable structure is getting harder to coordinate and put together. And suddenly, you know, maybe they've only got 1 out of 5 or 0 out of 5. So that's given me a clue to where I might start with my therapy targets. Okay, so we've discussed the CV words. Now, they're not the only types of words we're going to be looking at or targeting. Let's think about what else. Okay, so they've got the CV words, the CV and the VC words. They can be also incorporated, especially alongside alongside any of these other CV types of words. So we're going to check how are they going with when there's just a vowel and a consonant. There's nothing that they need to add onto the end. So checking how they're doing with those, again, just early developing sounds. And then with vowel consonant, there's words like up, eat. A child might be dropping off the consonants, even though there's only 2 sounds. They might be saying E instead of eat. So just noting how they're going. There is another level that we, you know, in a more detailed like assessment, we would check for VCV as well, vowel, consonant, vowel, like open. But we're not including those here just because I tried to keep this screener brief. Okay, so where to from here? Let's talk about consonant, vowel, consonant words where there is a consonant at the end. Before I would expect a child to be able to say consonant, vowel, consonant combination like this, I would expect they'd mastered these ones first. So have a look at this column here and this column here and have a think about which one is easier in terms of syllable structure or putting, well, they're all 1 syllable words, but in terms of what's easier in terms of being able to form a word. So thinking about motor speech as in it's all about that coordination of, it's not just about knowing individual sounds, it's about how do we put them together to make a word. So which word would be easier to say? Which words, which column, this column or this column? So you can probably guess. It's the one where all the sounds are changing within the word. Whereas if we jump over to here, it's staying fairly stable, and just all that's required is that the child repeats the consonant again. So dad, pop, tot. Your child, when you're assessing them, they might be you know, having difficulty at this level. So they might be just saying da, ho, top. So we're going to, yeah, check on that, and that might end up being a therapy target. And you wouldn't worry about incorporating CVC words where both consonants change until they've mastered this level. So that's the way that I always work, and I always find I have success is I never move to a harder level until an easier level is mastered, because to me, we need to get the syllables or that type of word structure stable before we want to push the motor system and make it harder. Sometimes I see people mixing up all kinds of words, and I mean, each to their own, but to me, what makes sense is to stick to a certain type of word so that the child can do lots of drill practice and achieve mastery before we make things harder. I find if we do mix in and bring in things that are too hard for the child, they lose trust that we're able to help them. They need to have a certain amount of success within each session to keep motivated and to look at us when we're giving them those cues and that support, and to have full trust that we know what we're doing, and we're going to help them to achieve success, and not push them so far that they're not achieving enough success, and it becomes disheartening. So, okay, we've looked now at the CVC words as well. Looked at all of these. Now, we're also going to check CVC words, but with more of a focus on how are they going with coordinating and sequencing a back sound with, a front sound with a back sound, or a back sound with a front sound. Like that's quite a significant jump. Are they able to put both of those words into a word and it doesn't fall apart? So sometimes the child will be okay at this level here with the CVC simple. When I say simple, it means the early sounds with these CVC early sound words, but then start giving them some of these words and it might start to fall apart because that level of coordination and sequencing is too challenging for the system at that stage. So say, for example, all these are correct, but these start getting incorrect. Okay, great. There's our therapy target for the CVC words, for example. On the other hand, if we're not making this distinction and realizing that sequencing these types of CVC words is harder than ones like this, well, we might be confused about, why they can do some CVC words and they can't do some other ones. And it's because of this complexity of moving from the front to the back. Also, we'll move on from that. Okay, so now I'm going to just jump here and then I'll discuss the CVCV complex. So we also want to check how does their system, motor speech system cope with when we're increasing complexity. So we might say something like soup, super, Superman. As the word gets longer, the similar words, we're just adding more and more onto it. Does the word start to does the production start to deteriorate? I saw an example recently where a colleague had some questions and she was wondering whether the child had apraxia, but I noticed that the errors seem to have a rhyme and reason to them. So with this soup, super, Superman, it was like toop, tupa, ban, even, for example. Actually, sorry, it was more like toop, tupa, tuperman. So yes, there were errors, but it wasn't increasing in complexities. The error was because they had a rule that S goes to T. So there's a rule that's in play. Whereas if it was more like apraxia, you might see something like maybe soup is okay, like soup, and then it might go to upa and then tupa m, right? You can just hear it's kind of like it's falling apart as it gets harder and harder. And I guess with the whole way that I think about, these word and syllable structures, and I touched on earlier, I try and get the foundation secure before I add complexity. So I liken it to, say you're learning to drive your manual car for the first time, if you think back to that. So if your learning instructor suddenly just kind of thrust you in the car and said, that's it, put the pedal down, we're going on the freeway, that would be quite a scary and chaotic experience in the motor sense, because we haven't slowly worked through the motor steps to get to the point of being able to coordinate all the complex things required to drive the car successfully on a freeway. There's so many steps before that one that should have been taught, and a good driving instructor would, of course, do that. So that's like a therapist who's skilled at motor speech is going to put those building block and foundational skills into place first before we increase the motoric load. So, for example, with the driver example, they might sit you down in the car, they might explain, this is the clutch, these are the brakes, this is the accelerator, this is how you hold the steering wheel, this is how we put the car into first gear. So all of that needs to be slowly broken down. And then that might be the first lesson and we just go forward a little bit and stop a few times. Then the second lesson, we might go for a bit of a longer drive where we need to coordinate more of the movements. And it's the same with apraxia therapy. We can't just throw everything at the child at once, including early sounds, later sounds, all sorts of syllable and word structures, and expect that mishmash to make sense. We need to be the ones who are finding out where the breakdown is, and then building on their strengths that they already have and knowing where to take the child from there on. Okay, so let me now kind of go through it with you in terms of just another way where we're going to think of it more as, say, we were working on these in a in a hierarchical sort of manner. What would it look like? I'll give you an example of, for example, a child starts at this level. So we've identified they get 0 out of 5 for these ones. So obviously that's going to be a target. Let's just say they've got a few CVs and they've got a few VCs, but not all correct. Let's say, for example, this CVC repetitive one, they're not getting those either. Okay, so there's no CVC words. They're struggling with these CVC repetitive ones, and these are not that great either. I'm going to start right there, start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. Okay, so let's do, let's say we're doing motor speech therapy, and I'm going to go do play-based activities where I'm teaching mama, mama, papa, dada. Say they don't have the B sound yet. What am I going to do? This is motor speech therapy, not articulation therapy. Well, I have to teach the sound. We have to get those early sounds in there. If they're not developed, how can we ever move on to the later sounds? So then I'm going to be showing boo. I might do a prompt on them, boo. We're going to establish that B sound and work on it. So they might just be going ooh, ooh, or maybe boo, boo. You might move to that, and then I'll work. And I've done this with kids. So like boo, boo. It took one of my clients, it took him like maybe a solid 2 years to get the P and the B solid. He does now though. So yeah, we're going to focus on these sort of words which are the basis, are the foundation, and we're not going to move on until we've got them, right? I do accept imprecise vowels at first, so maybe he can't do boo, boo perfectly. I would still accept something like boo, boo, at first, and then we keep building, we keep shaping. So then say, okay, we've worked on this for some time, but alongside, it's important not to only stick to one syllable structure or one type of word structure. Alongside, I would make sure to incorporate any of the other ones that we can possibly do. Usually it will be the CV and the VC as well, maybe some VCV. So I'm going to have these as targets. I'm also going to have these as targets. So, for example, we might play a game and we might do, say it's mama's turn or something, and we might say, mama do, or we might do, we're playing a game and something needs to come up, 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 right? So mama up. So these words are going to become the basis of our therapy. Okay, so we've been working on this one for a while, along with these, and they start getting mastery. They're getting these now. What am I going to do to take it up a step from the CVC repetitive words? What's the next CVCV level that I'm going to go up to? Am I going to jump up to words like bunny, Toby? No, I'm not, because that's jumped over the next step. We don't want to jump over something that's foundational. So instead of mama now, we're going to turn to words like mummy, daddy, puppy, bubble, turtle. Okay, so we can give this one a big tick. They've achieved that. We're moving on to CV1, CV2. Probably keep these ones going. But now let's look at maybe how else can we step things up. We haven't touched on CVC words yet. Let's see if we can get some CVC words. And of course, we're going to start with the ones where the consonant is repeated. So let's add these to our target, dad, pop. And of course, these are not the only 5. I've only put 5 in there to keep the checklist, the screener short. any words you can think of in that syllable structure with early sounds. And in future sort of posts and things like that, I can provide you with exhaustive lists of all of the words that I've managed to think of in my practice that fit within these ones. Okay, so now our targets are the CV1, CV2, the CVC repetitive, and of course we're going to just keep including these, but they probably don't need some kind of like particular focus because they're hopefully becoming more automatic now. Okay, so now all of this top 4 columns and the CVC repetitive are coming into our vocabulary that the child is able to be supported with through motor speech therapy. Okay, let's say they've achieved mastery here. They're able to do their mummy, daddy, puppy, bubble. How are we going to make it harder? What's the next step? So that's where we increase the complexity of the CVCV words. So what was the next step, if you remember? Right? We're not going to jump to the 3-syllable words. We have to go to the next step in the ladder. It's the C1, B1, C2, V2 words. So now they're handling this. Their syllables are not wobbly. They're staying stable when they're saying mummy, daddy, puppy, changing those vowels nicely. And bubble, bubble, turtle. And then we're fading away those cues even to where, maybe they might make a mistake. And then we just say, oh, can you fix that? And then they say mummy, so that they're not as reliant. And I'll do another video on the cueing hierarchy. That's kind of outside the scope of this video. But then, okay, so we've moved on to our new target where both the consonants and vowels change, but we're keeping to the early sounds. So bunny, Toby, tummy, happy. It could be other ones like teddy, table. So we're going to target those words now. And often I find that maybe this level I stay at the longest for my kind of severe or younger kids. But once we unlock this one, once we master this level and we get past here, keeping in mind they're able to now still do all of these ones up here, I find often kids will then have more than 50 words. And if through the language development, often that's the time where children will start to then, because those first 50 words have unlocked, and in my experience, then they start to form 2-word phrases and more. So this is an exciting time because once they achieve mastery here, I find they start to take off, right? And the hardest work is done. So thinking back, we're never going to just stick to one type of syllable structure because that is too limiting, and we're not broadening. We're not giving our client the full scope of like the sound development in terms of motor speech that they require. We need to keep it mixed up. Never just stick to one target here. What would be the complementing sort of targets now? So we know that they've mastered these types of CVC words we're now working on C1, B1, C2, B2. Well, how are we going to make the CVC words harder? We're going to move to the CVC ones with the simple early sounds. So we don't need to keep the consonant the same every time. Now it's top, home, mad, boat, pin, pot, mop, lots of words. And you'll find as we get to C1B, this column and this column here, a lot more words become available to us. It's kind of hard sometimes to be sticking to the CVCV repetitive level because we're limited with the words. There's not that many words that are duplicated like that. So, what's the extent? Mama, papa, dada, boo-boo, baba, titi, no. There's not a whole lot more. There's not a lot of those words. They're mainly, reserved for babies, and babies grow out of that phase. So, yeah, not many adults are using these types of words. But once you get to these words, it unlocks a lot of vocabulary as well, which is awesome because then you don't have to think so hard and be so creative in your sessions as well. It's like, oh, there's a table there. Let's throw in table. Oh, the teddy, teddy's another one. Teddy is muddy. There's a lot of words that can come up now. Plus, you've got all the other words that you've worked through, like turtle, puppy, all those other ones from before as well. So we have a lot more scope for words that we can use and that they can have success with our support. Okay, so Yes, we stepped it up from CVCV repetitive to CVC simple now, right? Even that unlocks a lot of words when you get to this stage. Okay, so say we've got mastery now. They can do the whole top row plus these 3 columns. Well, let's move away from CVCV words and let's go to those two syllable words, and let's go with early developing sound, and let's move to 3 syllable words with early developing sounds. So examples would be potato, tomato, animal, domino, banana. If you notice, they're still all sticking to our early developing sounds. We're not throwing in the trickier sounds, which we'll touch on in a moment. Okay, this one doesn't usually take too long, I find, because there's like, what would you call it? The motor system is getting so much more stable already by this point. So, okay, let's step it up a notch again. Let's add, they mastered their CVC words with all early developing sounds. Let's see if they can also do the front to back and back to front sounds like I explained earlier. So these might be our new targets. Of course, we're still doing all the ones from before as well as they pop up, but we're primarily trying to get these words to come up a lot in session so that we are pushing their system to the next level. But once we, and yeah, I won't go into kind of sentences and things like that, but as you can imagine, you can start to combine these sort of words with all different ones from up here. Okay. Now, what are we going to do next? So they've mastered all this top 2 rows. Well, now they're ready to start incorporating and learning some trickier sounds, because they've mastered all the types of words that go into the different syllable structures with the early sounds. Well, let's see, what sound could we get them to learn next? And by this time, they're probably starting to show, like, you're working with them and you're accepting, you know, maybe the name is Sophie, and you're accepting a close enough, you know, version of Sophie that the child has been able to do, because they can't say a cert yet. Well, suddenly, when you're accepting, you know, do-ti for Sophie, suddenly when but you continue metal, you can say do-ti for Sophie, and then suddenly she's kind of saying so-ti. And you think to yourself, oh, you know, they're starting to get it, because sounds do continue to develop, even naturally, when we're not targeting them as we're working on other things. So then, or you just say, I wonder, I'll just try. Can we try Snakey-san? And she's saying, it's not great, but you can see it's much better than before. So, okay, let's start to include so. It's in her name. It's a later developing sound, being a fricative. It's harder to say because we have to control that airflow. So, you know, you probably all know, if you're a speaker, you know, t and s is produced in the same place, but you've got to be able to then add that airflow. So, so it needs, that's why it's more complex. Okay, now we're introducing words with fricatives with that airflow. So, so words like ch, sh, and we're also going to be introducing, just trying to think why I've got the word wagon in there. I'm going to have a look at that. I wouldn't put that in the complex one. So keep an eye on it, maybe revising this. So zipper. Okay, so those ones are incorporating those more later developing sounds, just simply like including fricatives. So then let's start teaching them those words. So for example, we might then be cueing them for that. So chi can, and I'm expecting more of an accurate chirp. Maybe to this point they've just been doing ticken or titten. So I'm going to show them how chi can. They might just get it from that point, or if it's really, really hard, I might go back to an articulation approach just to get that sound into their phonemic repertoire. So I might show them how to do it, you know, working through the steps of the ch, chi or cha, chi, chu, and then words that start with ch, so chin, chop, you know, and then putting that word into a sentence. Yeah, you know, the articulation hierarchy. So I would work through that if I needed to, but alongside, you know, might just be showing them the cue as well. Chi can, she can. And you never know, they might surprise you even before going through the whole articulation hierarchy. They might start to get it. Okay, so the next word, like pencil, pencil, machine, machine. Maybe we might need to cue the n at the end. Machine. Let's forget about that wagon one till I clarify that. And zipper, zipper. Yeah, so getting that buzzy sound. Zipper. Yeah, so that's, I guess, the basic rundown of hopefully helping you to understand what this different like CVs all over the place mean. It really unlocks something when you, especially when you can differentiate, in my opinion, between a CV1 and CV2 and C1V1, C2, V2. Why are they different? Why don't we just, put them all together and target them all at once? I don't know. That's how I do it, and that's how I've always had success. And it didn't click for me until I got that distinction. That would probably be my biggest takeaway to you. If you're sitting there thinking, I don't even know where to start with the target selection, the child is not enjoying this, they're not progressing, they're not, it doesn't feel like they have confidence in me. Try that. Try just making sure that you're keeping your CV1 and CV2 words separate from your C1V1, C2, V2. Don't do the bunny, muddy, tummy ones until they can do the CV1, CV2. You'll see that once they achieve mastery, we're keeping things stable before we add complexity. Otherwise, it's just going to be too wobbly the whole time. Okay. Let's see, what have I got here? There's the patter cake one, patter cake. So that's just been a traditional one that's done you just get them to say those three words 3 times, patter cake, patter cake, patter cake. And then you're going to record how they say it each time. And we're looking out for, are they saying it differently each time? Are there vowel errors? Because that can just be another indicator that, the system is a bit wobbly and they're finding it hard to, coordinate words in the same way each time. Okay. So I did suggest, especially for if this is quite new to you, to take a video with parent permission so that you can review later and make sure that you've really heard everything in the way you thought you heard it. And you can just write straight over the words. So say the child didn't say win, he said din. You can just cross out this W and write in a D. I suggested to just say they did say din, rather than just leaving it that and moving on. I suggested then try to help them to say the word. So can we try that again? Win. Well, watch my mouth. Win. Win. And then you can record, okay, they got it after I showed them, so on the second attempt they got it. So just you can note it however you want to, but I suggested maybe just write 2 times, like it took 2 goes to get that correct. Still mark it incorrect when you score it out of 5 because they didn't get it on their own and they need support with it. But it's just good information to know, do the speech cues. And if you don't know what all the speech cues are yet, I will cover that in a later video. Just at least get them to watch your mouth and we'll say, can we try that again? Win. Just slow it down a little bit for them. Win, right? That's enough just to check whether a little bit of help will get them over. It also just helps the child to maybe see that with a little bit of your help they can get the words closer even in that initial stage. Okay. Things to listen out for. Listen out for vowel distortions. I suggested just circle the vowel that is distorted. Don't worry about it trying to write exactly how it sounded. Just circle so that we know it wasn't right, it was distorted. Because vowel distortions can be a sign of apraxia. If they're using schwas, for example, instead of saying nothing, they're saying nothing, or potato might be to-a-o. So that sort of is kind of like a silent sound, just kind of used as a sort of placeholder or something like that for the actual sound that's been deleted. Another example of a schwa might be I want it, I it. right? So that, yeah, it's just kind of like an empty type of sound there, but instead of a consonant. So have a look if you can see visible jaw sliding. So, mum might be, they're groping around and almost like trying to find the word somewhere, like mum. We never should be moving our jaw when we're talking. So that's a sign. Is the mouth asymmetrical during the speech? So sometimes I see kids doing like, they're trying really hard to say, I don't know, maybe like cat, and it's like cat, almost as though there's like a clear, see-through string pulling them out. Maybe, like bop, bop, bop. The lips actually like being pulled to the side. So another sign, deleting sounds a lot in words, especially or deleting whole syllables. So, potato might be tato or ao. But the deletion of a weak syllable alone doesn't need to mean that it's apraxia. It could also be a phonological process where we're just like gathering all this data to see the big picture. Increased errors as the words become more difficult. Yeah, so you want to see like summertime. So some, summer, summertime. You want to see there's deterioration there. It's not just like what I said before. Maybe they just don't have a s. Maybe they're saying tum, tummer, tummer time. That's not the speech deteriorating as the words get more complex. That's just a process that they're using to simplify the s. Okay. The other thing to just try and hear as well, aside from just checking individual words, is try and get them talking, like to their parent, to you, and listen what their speech sounds like when they're talking in long connected speech, and try and find out from the mum or the dad, was there meaning to that? Like, what did they say? What did that mean? So that they can translate for you, so that are they saying real words? Are they talking with intent? And then try to hear what it sounds like. So an example I sometimes give is, in the extreme version, they might be deleting all the consonants. So, for example, mum, I want to eat could sound like e, right? We don't often hear people walking around talking like that, do we? Or saying something like, I'm hungry now. Again, in the extreme version, if I deleted every consonant, would sound like right? We don't hear people talking like that. So that's why a lot of actually diagnosing apraxia, childhood apraxia of speech, is pattern recognition, right? It's not to do with some technical test. It's a speech therapist who has heard children and worked with children with childhood apraxia a lot of time, like many times, and you can hear what it sounds like. Like you can hear what French sounds like, even though you don't understand it. You can hear what German sounds like, even though you don't understand it. So yeah, I encourage you to jump on my website and have a look. On the very last page, there's an example that a speech therapist from Tasmania developed. She compiled 83 children with apraxia speaking, and just take the time to listen to that, and you'll start to hear the patterns. Like, the best thing you can do is train your ear to that pattern recognition of, does it sound like apraxia when they're talking in sentences? Yeah, that would probably be a much quicker way to get there than what we've done here. But this is important too, because this would help you determine your actual targets and help you work out what is actually going on. But yes, that's very indicative of apraxia of speech. Another example, like you could do, like "Mom, I want to eat," is I'm going to try and do an example where the substitutions are just like not what you would expect, because it's more indicative of things are just getting really wobbly, and we're just kind of putting any old sound on and just trying to kind of get through this word. So "Mum, I want to eat," instead of deleting every single consonant, might sound something like I want to key, right? It's just kind of gone way off target. Let me think of another one. The doll is playing, something like a doll is K, right? Or the ball is round, o i ra, right? Something like the school bag is mine. U, A, I, ein, right? So I guess I deleted every consonant there, but yeah, have a look at that video. You'll kind of start to get that pattern recognition and just training your ear for that if CAS is an area you're interested in. Okay, other red flags or signs that it could be a childhood apraxia of speech is if the understanding is or the receptive language is, you know, age appropriate. So obviously, then if they're having CAS, the output is not going to be at that level of their receptive language. But the receptive language doesn't even have to be age appropriate for motor speech therapy to work. It just needs to be significantly better than the expressive. So say you do like a formal language assessment and they're only coming up moderate in receptive language, but the expressive language is severe. Well, you've still got a statistically significant gap. It's still really worth a try of doing a bit of motor speech therapy. Maybe they'll progress a little bit slower, but they probably will make some gains still. You know, this is kind of, motor speech therapy does rely on memory a bit and being able to eventually generalize the things that we're learning in sessions. So, but it's always worth a try. And then, you know, if it's not working, you tried, and you can try different strategies if it hasn't worked. Okay, so I did mention, I touched on, they seem to be communicating with intent. I had a boy the other day, he met me at the front of the house and he wanted to say, oh, because he was surprised I parked a little bit further, and he said, eat your owl, eat your owl. So he was telling me, is this your house? Like, do you live next door to me? I didn't realize you lived next door to me. So yes, then I said, oh, no, that's not my house. I said, can you show me, let me feel your breathy sound, house. So yeah, I don't see that a lot, like those complex sort of gestures with kids who don't have apraxia. And I mean, if it's more sort of autism without apraxia, I guess more so. Okay. They might become visibly frustrated when their attempts to speak are not understood by others. If you can imagine, like, you know, you've obviously got fully developed language and you speak verbally to people, and then imagine you woke up tomorrow and you couldn't talk anymore. How frustrating would that be? Because you've got the language, you've got all the sentences in your mind, you know exactly what you're trying to say, and you go out to say it, but it's all jumbled. You know, how would that feel? And then, you know, out in the community, people look at you like, you know, you're not understanding. They assume you're not understanding much either, but you are. And then they treat you a certain way that, you know, doesn't correspond with what you're thinking about and what you're understanding. They're assuming that you're not understanding, but you are. So because there's such a big mismatch between often how much they understand and how poorly their expressive communication is coming out, people don't often have this understanding that they have all that language inside is just getting jumbled when they go to speak. And the way I often explain it to parents is there's nothing wrong with the brain, there's nothing wrong with the speech muscles, it's getting the message from the brain to the speech muscles is getting jumbled up. So yeah, as a result, it can become very frustrating when the child is trying over and over to kind of get it out, but often parents can't understand some of the words that they're trying to say, and it can become frustrating because they just feel like they don't have a way to get it out. And of course, AAC can have an important role to play there in the interim with reducing frustration. That's alternative and augmentative communication. Okay. All right, so I just recommended basically look for patterns. It's not so much about getting some score or something like that. This is just very informal. Look for patterns. I tend to, you know, when I'm looking for these things, I do say to myself, how many did they get right? How many did they get wrong? And then I see where are they getting the most wrong? And I look for all the things listed above. Are there vowel errors? Are there distortions? And then try and figure out, as I kind of went through with you earlier, which level would you start at now? You know, what would be the appropriate level of CV words and what would be the appropriate level of CVC words, if any, or do we start just with CV and VC? Okay, so I'm suggesting, yes, if you do notice a bunch of errors kind of in one segment, refer to a speech pathologist who has experience with childhood apraxia of speech, or if you don't feel confident yourself and you are a speech pathologist, seek out some support and you know, make sure that you're accessing the best form of motor speech therapy that you can to support this child. I'm saying if the child is 4 years and older and makes errors on any part of the screener, because, you know, often 4-year-olds will start to have some of those later developing sounds, then they can be referred to a speech therapist for a check. And if they're a 3-year-old and they don't yet, 2 or 3-year-old and they don't yet have those later developing sounds, you know, that's kind of more to be expected. So I do have my email address up here because with no obligation or anything like that, I am more than happy to answer anybody that does the screener and wants to, without identifying the child's information, wants to flick it over and just have somebody have another look at it and see, do you think this is childhood apraxia of speech? I'm happy to just have a little look to say what I'd recommend. I had a colleague send one over to me the other day, and I thought, oh, doesn't look quite like I would expect childhood apraxia to look, even though it had some things that looked like it, like most of the multisyllabic words were reduced. But then I thought, I sat down, and one day I'll do a video to show you my process of, I think I've got it here, of how I figure out if something is an articulation, phonological, or motor speech error. I kind of write it out like this, and that's not going to make sense to anybody. I figure out if the error, I'll save this for another video. Yeah, we'll do that another time. I think that's enough for today. If you decide you want to try out the screener, I am more than happy to receive emails about anybody that wants some clarification around that. And if it's just a short clarification, I'm happy to just go through it and figure out what I can and email you back. If it's going to be very involved, then I'll probably just send you an email saying, look, if you want, we can book in a consult. But I think for the most part, I should be able to have a quick look and just get back to you, at least with a bit of feedback for free. So yeah, my mission is just to get the word out there, have people know what childhood apraxia of speech is, but with my #1 target of speech pathologists, that every single speech pathologist, at least in Australia, is going to know what childhood apraxia of speech sounds like. So yeah, let's keep connecting, let's keep learning. And again, just another plug for that video created by a speech pathologist, Nia in Tasmania. Check that out, listen to it, watch it a few times. It will really help you figure out, it will train your ear to know what apraxia of speech sounds like. Okay, all the best, and I wish you all the best with treating your children with CAS on your caseload, and feel free to reach out if you ever want any support. I'm available for one-to-one consultations via Zoom or in person if you happen to be in Albury, or any other sort of support. Yeah, email me things to look at, anything that sort of you know, takes 15 minutes or less. At this stage, I've got capacity just to check it over for free quickly for you. As my you know, as my clientele for apraxia clients grows, it might be a little bit reduced, but yeah, I will always have that offer of consultations for speech pathologists, and I'm also available to come and present and talk to speech pathologists who are interested. Okay, I'll see you at the next video. Bye.